What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham, Gius, and Matthews break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the latest episode of Table for Three, called Back in Hurt Business, with Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley, and Cedric Alexander. I was looking forward to this one, as many other people were. I was a big fan of the Hurt Business. I think it's officially over. Interestingly, the timing of this episode was interesting, because I think it was this week the group officially ended. Because I won't go into a full history lesson here. I know the group technically ended back in March of 2021, but Shelton and Cedric broke up, and the whole group was broken up for a while. And then Bobby and MVP were kind of still the Hurt Business by themselves, and then Shelton and Cedric reunited at the end of the year, seemingly with Bobby and MVP, although they 100% weren't, and then Bobby and MVP broke it off with them multiple times, although Cedric and Shelton continued to call themselves the Hurt Business in the months that followed up until this week, when Cedric and Shelton had matches on Raw and Main Event respectively, with no Hurt Business music and no representation of the group at all. So it seems like the group is officially over, and to that I say, that sucks, because that's a big shame. But anyway, to open this episode, Bobby acknowledges their issues in storyline, which I thought was a nice touch. From there, Cedric talks about the origins of the group and that he recalls having house show matches with Bobby back in like a 2019 late loop, like a late 2019 loop of Raw shows that they had, and they always had great chemistry. It was around that point Bobby wanted to start a faction with him and Cedric, maybe not necessarily Cedric, but just start a group in general, probably with Shelton, who they weren't doing anything with at that point. And this was before MVP came back. This was in like late 2019. MVP didn't come back until the Rumble in January of 2020. He's kind of all over the place here as far as like what the name is and stuff like that. But Bobby has mentioned this before, that he got the name from the American Top Team shirt, like a shirt of the American Top Team gym or whatever, courtesy of Dan Lambert. Bobby talks the inspiration for the group and how it kind of came about and what he was hoping for from the group, which is the vibe they kind of nailed when they ended up putting it together. And again, like I said, Bobby and Benjamin weren't really doing anything around that point. Lashley was still doing the Lana shit, which was terrible. And Shelton was doing a whole lot of nothing. He actually mentioned how in 2019, the last thing of note that he did in that company, prior to the Hurt Business, was when he was just interviewed backstage on SmackDown several times, and he was kind of looking off into the distance. That was fucking dumb, and that went nowhere. So that was a whole bunch of nothing, and that went nowhere and whatever. So he really needed something to salvage his career. Otherwise, he probably would have been released by now. And thankfully, that was not the case. But yeah, Benjamin wasn't exactly on board with what he was doing. He mentioned that here. But the idea that Bobby was pitching him, he wasn't also on board with that either. Not that he didn't like it. He just didn't think it fit him. He honestly thought it was more fitting for someone like MVP. And MVP, around the time of the Rumble, and this is a shoot, he wasn't planning on coming back full time. The only thing he had on the docket was the Rumble return. And he even said after he had that match with Rey Mysterio, like, he made it official. He put it out on Instagram following the match with Rey Mysterio on the Raw following the Rumble. He was done. He hung up the boots and he retired and whatever, and then he kept coming back for VIP lounges, and then he became the manager for Bobby, and then he still wrestled anyway. So it ended up working out perfectly. But yeah, Benjamin says that the Raw Underground stuff that they did was really the turning point for them, and I would agree. Like, they were doing some cool stuff on Raw in the summer of 2020 during the pandemic, and Bobby was having that great, feud with Drew for a little while in June of 2020. But it wasn't until they got to show off their like legitimate background, as athletes and as wrestlers and whatever, in, the Raw Underground shit in August of 2020 that their careers were like really started taking off as the Hurt Business. And, they talked about that and they showed the footage, and that whole thing was a giant waste of time, but it did benefit the Hurt Business if nothing else. And they wanted to add a new member. They thought about adding Ricochet. They thought about adding Apollo Crews. And ultimately they settled on Cedric. They weighed the pros and cons. They settled on Cedric. And the real point of the group was not only to get over, but to elevate someone else. And they wanted to help elevate Cedric Alexander. Unfortunately, they did for a while, but they couldn't long-term because Cedric's back to right where he was before the group started, and that's a shame. So they all benefited in the interim, though. They all benefited. Cedric and, Shelton were tag team champions. Bobby became U.S. champion, WWE champion. MVP was a fantastic manager. They all benefited from the group. Alexander jokes about taking down Benjamin at a certain point. Like, this was before the group came to be, but, like, I guess they would have this running joke backstage that no one could take down Benjamin because he's a legit shoot fighter, obviously, shoot wrestler. And Cedric did, which was pretty funny. But yeah, so they bonded long before the Hurt Business came to join together, before they joined forces. And the whole point of the group is that they gave the audience a different look at black talent. And Bobby wanted to prove that black athletes, superstars, group factions, whatever, were more than just portrayed as thugs or as this or that, or that they were dancing, that they can go out there, dress well, and not just because they were black, but just because they were four men that just so happened to be black. And Shelton talks a lot about that as well, and I think they really nailed it with that group as well. They did a fantastic job of that, and having representation for other black athletes and kids and stars and whatever else, wrestlers. I thought they did a fantastic job of that. Cedric even says that he prayed that the group could be together when fans came back into the arena so he could see people in the audience wearing suits and shit like that. And Benjamin even notes multiple times on this episode, he was reluctant about the suits. He's not a suit guy. He would always wear a t-shirt and jeans, unlike MVP and Bobby and later Cedric. But they had a meeting one time where Vince said, "Oh, Bobby, you always look good. MVP, you always look good. Shelton, you always look good in that pair of jeans that you wear." And he was like, all right, I see how it is. I see what message you're trying to send now, which I thought was great. But yeah, Bobby says that they had synergy and they went out after every show, and it was, unlike anything Bobby had done in his career up to that point. And it was really, a point. Benjamin made it a point while they were together to not acknowledge on screen or whatever. I know they got asked about it in a million interviews. I don't know if I ever asked Bobby about it when I interviewed him. I don't think so, but a lot of people did draw the comparison that they're the new nation. Although it has absolutely nothing to do with the new nation. The Nation of Domination did have to do with we're black wrestlers that are oppressed or whatever. That is absolutely not the point of this group. They just so happen to be all four black superstars. It was not, a thing where they have to be black in order to enter the group or whatever. That was just kind of just so happened to be the case. And their goals in that company had nothing to do with what the nation was accomplishing years earlier. Not that they didn't respect what they did, but they didn't want to force it, and they didn't. So they made it a note to not even acknowledge it on screen, which is a great point. It's kind of the same thing with the New Day. People, I know I'm guilty of this, but, back in the day when the New Day came to be, people were saying, oh, it's the new nation. It had nothing to do with the nation. They were just three black guys. It really had nothing to do with that at all. And obviously, all these years later, they lasted 5-6 times the amount of time that the nation did or whatever. Anyway, Cedric says that he improved his in-ring skills as part of the group, has more aggression now, more confidence in the ring. Bobby also found that there was more to wrestling than just kicking and punching, and that during his time in the group that he made things mean more in the ring. Benjamin said that his presentation really changed the fans' perception of him, and he didn't know how that could really change your career. And Bobby even mentions that Batista always came, because him and Shelton came up in the business with people like Benjamin, MVP as well. Batista always came out there in front of the audience and even backstage arriving at the show looking like a star, and it would make people pay that much more attention to you on screen. And then to close out here, Shelton, they probably told him to bring this up, although it is fitting given his background, but he mentions the Next in Line program, the NIL program that WWE is doing right now, that Gable Steveson was the first recipient or part of or whatever. Shelton makes this interesting comment that he goes, we're not going to see Gable Steveson in the ring for years, but he's getting paid for his likeness now, so he's all set up for when he enters the business. I mean, I know there's rumors now, and I'm not sure when this was filmed, probably over Mania weekend a few months ago. There's rumors right now that Steveson may not even be in WWE. He might actually go back to not collegiate wrestling or amateur wrestling or whatever. He may not even be here in the long term, which is interesting. But the fact that Shelton said, oh yeah, we may not see him in the ring for years, that may be his own opinion, and he's probably right. But it does make it a little bit more weird in retrospect when you consider that they drafted him to Raw as part of the 2021 WWE Draft in October, which was granted 8 months ago, and we saw him on both nights of WrestleMania. We've seen him make appearances here and there on Raw in the crowd, so, I mean, I'm not really sure why you would have him make all these appearances if he's not going to be in the ring for a while, but I guess we'll see. I think their original plan was to have him in the ring by WrestleMania, which clearly did not happen and was not going to happen. That was very unrealistic, but we'll see what the future holds for him. And they even said, Bobby said, the plants are, the seeds have been planted for him being in the group or against the group, which obviously is never going to happen because the group's since been broken up, but they've interacted with him on TV, and Bobby is seen backstage, and they show footage of that. And, in those interactions, they've planted the seeds for, maybe Gable Steveson comes in and feuds with Bobby Lashley or joins him or whatever, which I think is pretty cool. And I've always thought that, too. I think even RJ pitched that idea that, maybe we could see them together at some point on screen. Bobby and Gable Steveson, that wouldn't be a bad idea. But anyway, that was Table for Three, the Back and Hurt Business episode of the Shelton, Bobby, and Cedric. Great stuff. This is definitely the best episode they've done so far this season. The 24/7 title one was kind of pointless and dumb, in my opinion. But, I like the Angle Academy one. That was also very good. But this one had just genuine chemistry. They were having a great time. They were laughing. They were telling stories, doing some really fun stuff for a group that didn't even really last more than a year and a half, a year, 6 months, or whatever you want to say. So, yeah, really cool to see this trip down memory lane with these three guys. It would have been cool if MVP was a part of it, but I know Bobby and MVP have had their issues lately on TV, more so than Bobby and Shelton and Cedric, so I can kind of understand that. And it's called Table for 3, not Table for 4. Although I do think they've had 4 people on the show before. At any rate, though, good stuff here. Check it out right now on Peacock. Back in Hurt Business, rather. This edition of Table for 3. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews. Happy Father's Day, and I'll catch your ass down the road.